There are few places in the world that are as captivating as ghost towns. Gold mining villages lost in the desert sand, abandoned offshore islands, or earthquake-ridden hillside villages. There's something about an abandoned area that brings out the explorer in each of us. Maybe it's the history behind these towns that are waiting to be uncovered, or maybe it's the adventures that await. Either way, here's a list of deserted towns that you will definitely want to visit. Number 11. Ruby, Arizona. Located 50 miles southwest of Tucson and 4 miles north of the Mexican border is the Arizona town of Ruby. It is now a ghost town surrounded by the Coronado National Forest, rugged mountains and desert. Ruby was once known as the largest mining camp in southwest Arizona. By the early 1900s, the town was being mined for gold, silver, zinc, and copper. Ruby was slowly growing and the population reached about 1,200 by the 1930s. A school, post office, and the general store could all be found in the growing town, but the mine closed in 1940 and Ruby quickly became abandoned. The town was closed to the public for many years, but is now open for visitors. You can explore the area that was once a successful mining town, and there are many trails that visitors are encouraged to hike. You can also fish the private lakes of Ruby, and picnic areas and day camping are also available. Like and subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to get 1 week good luck for you. Try this, it really works. Number 10. Glenrio, New Mexico. On the borders of Texas and New Mexico, you'll find the deserted town of Glenrio. The town once sat along a remote part of the famous Route 66 and gave travelers a chance to stop to visit diners, bars, motels, dance halls, and gas stations. Glenrio was a thriving railroad town, but eventually bent in the railroad to focus on growing traffic on Route 66. Glenrio boomed from the 1930s to the 1950s, offering gas station and dining options for travelers. But the boom ended in 1975, after Interstate 40 was built and bypassed the small town. Most of the buildings are now abandoned and some are falling apart. The town is listed in the National Register of Historic Places and is worth the detour to exit I-40 to check out a piece of history. Number 9. Bodie, California. Bodie is arguably the most popular ghost town in the United States. The California town was once a thriving gold mining area with more than 10,000 residents. The town was named after William Brodie, the man who discovered small amounts of gold in the hills near the Mono Lake. People started flocking to the town afterward, and it was booming by the late 1800s. By 1881, Bodie had become known for his lawlessness, with multiple murders, holdups, robberies, and fights occurring. The boom started to decline by the next year, and the population dropped drastically. In 1892, a fire destroyed much of the business district and caused even more people to flee the area. 40 years later, another fire destroyed 95% of the remaining buildings in Bode. By the 1940s, OD was a ghost town. The town became a historic state park in 1962, and it is also a California Historic Site and National Historic Site. Only a small part of Bode remains, but tourists are welcome to come to visit the once thriving gold mining town. Number 8. Midden, Norway. Midden was founded by the Swedes, but the terrain was sold to the Soviet Union in 1927. The Soviets mined the settlement for coal deposits until the operation was shut down in 1998. Months later, the area was abandoned and is now only occupied by wildlife, including sea birds, seals, and polar bears. The town still stands today with only the ghostly remains of industrial life to show. According to the TV series Life After People, Pyramid will stand at least for another 500 years thanks to the extreme Arctic climate. Longer than any other modern human settlement on Earth would without maintenance. Visitors to the settlement arrive by ship and are led by a gun-toting guide ready to shoot in case of a bear attack. Tourists have the option to explore the area for a few hours before leaving, or stay in the eerie settlement at the Tulip Hotel and Museum, which is open during the summer months. Number 7. Tineham, England. Before World War II, Tineham was a small village that relied mainly on farming and fishing, but the town would soon change. In 1943, all the residents of the village were forced to leave so that area could be used as a firing range, and they never returned. The valley area of Tineham is still used as a firing range and is owned by the Ministry of Defense. In 1968, the village remained behind barbed wire, but access to the beach was granted on public holidays. A refurbished schoolroom was opened in 1994, followed by the Tineham Farm in 2008. Commercial development is not allowed in the town, which is why there is no gift shop or other buildings to turn the town into a tourist attraction. With access to rich wildlife and the beach, though, Tineham won't be considered a dead town for much longer. Number 6. Oratorsaint, France. Oratorsaint was the site of the worst Nazi massacre carried out on French soil. A total of 642 people, including 205 children, were shot and burned alive in 1944. The town was destroyed after the massacre, and only a few people managed to survive. The village was never rebuilt, and it still stands just as it was left that horrific day. Each year the French government contributes money to preserve the abandoned village. The Oratorsaint is classified as a historical monument, and they attract more than 300,000 visitors each year. There is also a museum with 5 exhibition spaces that contain documents, testimonies, and narratives that explain the barbaric events that occurred. Number 5. Kennicott, Alaska. Kennicott is now just an abandoned ghost town in Alaska. Kennicott was once a thriving copper mining town. From 1911 to 1938, nearly $200 million worth of copper was processed at the Kennicott Copper Corporation, which would later be known as the Kennicott Minerals Company. The operation had one component where the ore was extracted from the mountains and another where it was processed. At the peak of operation, the mill town employed about 600 people. Kennicott was self-sustaining with its own hospital, store, school, skating rink, tennis court, and dairy. But the supply of high-grade ore started diminishing by the late 1920s. Profits declined and costs increased, leading to the closure of the operation in 1938. The Kennicott mine is now a National Historic Landmark District. It is a popular tourist attraction that can be seen through walking tours, but you will need a guide to explore the large red mill building. Number 4. North Brother Island, New York. North Brother Island is a 20-acre island located in the East River off the Bronx. In 1885, the city purchased the island to build the Riverside Hospital, which was used to treat people suffering from contagious diseases such as typhus, smallpox, tuberculosis, and yellow fever. It was once home to Typhoid Mary, who carried the bacteria that caused typhoid fever. She was quarantined on the island on and off until she died in 1938 from pneumonia. In 1905, more than 1,000 people lost their lives when a steamship caught fire near the island. The hospital reopened after World War II to house war veterans and was later used to treat heroin addicts. High costs and corruption caused the hospital to shut its doors in 1963, and everyone living on the island left. The island has been abandoned ever since. North Brother Island has been under the control of the New York City Parks Department since 2001 and is off-limits to everyone. City council members are working to open the island, though, and give visitors limited access. They are working to make the island more accessible to allow people to experience its history. However, many buildings are falling apart, weeds are growing through the roads and walkways, and is considered unsafe to enter the island. So don't expect to get a peek anytime soon. Number 3. Pitcher, Oklahoma. Pitcher sprang up after lead and zinc deposits were discovered in 1914. The population quickly grew as both metals were needed during World War I. Pitcher's miners helped to fill the demand. More than half of the lead and zinc used during the war came from local mines. Eventually, the town became one of the largest exporters of lead and zinc in the world. Unfortunately, mining blood and zinc left behind a toxic byproduct called tachat. a poisonous chalky white grit. After the mining stopped in the 1970s, there was an estimated 178 million tons of chat, mills, sand and sludge piled around the town. The townspeople had no idea the chat was highly poisonous. They used it to fill their driveways and their children's sandboxes. Families picnicked on the chat mounds. Children rode their bikes on them. And the high school track team trained on them. In the 1990s, a school counselor learned of a link between lead and learning disabilities. Children were tested and 46% of the students had unsafe levels of lead in their blood. The government attempted to clean up the town, but they gave up when sinkholes started to appear. Most of the town's buildings were in danger of collapsing. The government knew they needed to get people out of pictures, so they approved a buyout to relocate the town's residents. Nearly everyone left, although a few people did choose to stay. The town is still toxic while the air quality meets the government's minimum standards. Windy days blow large amounts of lead throughout the city. Even wildlife is not safe from the area's toxins. In 2015, more than 1,000 migratory birds were found dead across Pitcher. It is believed they died of zinc poisoning. So you can still legally visit the ghost town, but we highly recommend that you steer clear. Number 2. Kalmanskop, Namibia. The town of Kalmanskop, Namibia was once a booming diamond mining town. Hundreds of German families flocked there to make their fortune after diamonds were found just sitting on top of the sand. Zacharias Luala, a railway worker, discovered the area in 1908 as he dug away from the railway line, prompting hundreds to call this patch of the Namibia desert their home. As Coma's cotton grew, it even started to resemble a German town. The first diamond rush brought newfound riches to the small community, and they soon built a hospital, ballroom, power station, school, bowling alley, theater, and casino. The diamond production had peaked in the 1920s, but wars and other distractions caused it to come to a halt in 1954 and move to more profitable fields. Kalmanskop is now a popular tourist attraction where you can tour the abandoned buildings, which now feature rooms filled with sand from past sandstorms. A permit is required to visit the area, and a restaurant museum is on location to visit while touring the ghost town. Number 1. Krakow, Italy. Krakow is a beautiful hillside town that has been left abandoned for more than 50 years. The former medieval village sits in the countryside of southern Italy and provided excellent views and warnings of potential attackers. Krakow was growing in population, but was struck by a plague in 1656 that killed hundreds of townspeople. A severe famine caused a mass migration of residents to North America between 1892 and 1922. Since the town was built on a hill, it was vulnerable to landslides, and those who lived there were affected by many of them through the years. Krakow has survived plagues and famine, but the landslides would force the populace to find new homes. In 1963, more than 1,800 people had to leave the town for their safety. The city still stands abandoned, but is the site of multiple concerts and festivals. It has also been featured in scenes from movies such as The Passion of the Christ, Quantum of Solace, and Saving Grace. This is the end of our video. Do you know any similar place like these all? Comment down below. You can watch more amazing videos on our channel here.